Good morning. The BRICS and the Global South countries are developing their own financial and banking system, and they're using our own currencies, dollars and euro, to finance a lot of their trade and even to fund major infrastructure projects. This effort is primarily being led by China because China has such enormous foreign exchange reserves and huge trade surpluses with the United States and with Europe. Every day, then, they have giant new pools of capital that they can invest or lend or put to use here in mainland China. This was a minor news story everywhere except in Nigeria, but it serves as a great example of what's happening now in many places across Africa, Asia, and South America. And this was the headline in most media outlets. Here's railway supply. The Nigerian railway project got a $250 million infusion from the China Development Bank, and the whole project will run almost $1 billion, $973 million, and this is the one from Reuters. But the South China Morning Post goes deeper into where the money for the project actually came from and why. It's by subscription only and paywalled, so we'll put the most important parts on the screen. The Nigerian railway project was paused in 2020 by Chinese banks, but now there's new financing and the project is underway again. The Kano-Kaduna railway will be funded 85% by China and the rest by Nigeria, and will stitch together China's existing rail networks in the country. China's Exim Bank had planned to lend the proceeds for the Kaduna-Kano line, but they changed their mind when they had doubts about how they would be repaid. Their solution now is to use a loan from China Development Bank instead, and China now believes that the project will become commercially viable. So right there begs the question, why doesn't Exim Bank do this deal, since they now believe the project will be viable? And here's the answer, kinda. China Development Bank is going to make the loan in euro instead of in renminbi, the Chinese currency. That's because interest rates denominated in euro carry a lower interest rate than for dollars or renminbi. Construction of the new line will be handled by China Civil Engineering Construction Corp., now one of the biggest engineering and construction companies in the world. Our problem is that this part isn't quite true. Euro loans carry higher interest rates than loans in renminbi. The benchmark interest rate in the EU is 3.8%, and is up sharply since 2022. In China, it's around 3.5%, and it's falling since 2022. A Chinese bank has a lower cost of funds for renminbi than a bank's funding cost for euro. So when we try to figure out why a Chinese bank is lending euro to build railroads in Nigeria, the first step is to understand that every day over €1 billion pour into China because of its trading surpluses with the EU. In 2023, the European Union had a merchandise trade deficit with China of $387 billion, or about 380 billion euro. The euro and dollar are almost at parity. So we'll call that €1 billion per day, every day. And this 250 million euro that China Development Bank sent to Nigeria is what China earns in trade with the EU every 6 hours. In other words, China will be able to build that entire Nigerian railroad with just 1 day of income, with just the EU. Chinese bankers go to bed at night thinking about how to build the Nigerian railroad, and when they wake up the next morning, the money for the whole thing just rolled in overnight from their trading surplus with the EU. A quick summary of what happened here then. China doesn't want to lend its own currency because that is risky money for a Chinese domestic bank to lend abroad on deposits here in mainland China. But this is offshore money until Chinese bankers and regulators bring it here. When the money is in Hong Kong, they can lend these euro and dollars however they choose. And increasingly, China believes that it's better to invest their trading surpluses into Africa or South America instead of back into the US or Europe. Instead of buying US Treasury bonds, they'll lend their US dollars to BRICS countries to build infrastructure there. So in this case, this railroad will benefit Chinese supply chains in Africa. Most of the work will be done by one of their own engineering companies. Nigeria gets thousands of jobs working to build the railroad. Then, thereafter, in the warehouses and the mines and the refineries and the logistics hubs that China needs to keep their factories going here. And Nigeria also gets a passenger railway basically for free. If Nigeria never makes a single principal payment on this loan, China might not even care that much. These billion euro is house money, representing just one single day of doing business in Europe. And China can afford to ignore whether enough passengers are buying enough tickets between Kaduna and Kano. The valuable part is the freight railroad, and that's why Chinese regulators changed their minds about the commercial viability of this project. Said another way, the stability of China's supply chain is more important than the stability of this particular loan that's used to get the railway built. Whether or not it's a performing loan 10 years from now is secondary. The Belt and Road is a massive diplomatic effort. It involves giant investments in developing countries to get infrastructure developed. And for China, it's also about bulletproofing their supply chains, tightening relationships with natural resources economies so their factories here can keep exports flowing and produce more charts like these. And Chinese don't even have to use their own money. This is the Yangtze River Bridge in Wuhan. Be good.
What you'll drink or what you'll wear. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find.